Hello. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is I need to address the elephant in the room. I'm sure you're all thinking it, wondering right now, why am I wearing tennis shoes? I actually broke my foot a couple of months ago. I am just out of the boot, and my orthopedist did not allow me to put heels on just yet. I did try this morning. Unfortunately, the scream that emitted from my mouth scared the dogs so much that I thought, I'm going to stick with the tennies. So I am not a total dork. I just dress like one. So the other thing I'd like to do real quick is because it's, about an hour after you've eaten, food settles. We get a little tired. You look at the agenda. I got to listen to this person for 45 minutes. And I have to look like I'm interested. So what I'd like you to do is an exercise that I learned from a professional actor. So stand up, if you can, for me. Just a minute. Just stand up where you are. We're going to do something to get our energy moving. I'm not used to working with a mic. Usually I'm hands-free, so I apologize. But what you're going to do is put your hands together. And I want you to identify a spot either on the ceiling, in front of you, and the side, because I'm going to put the mic down and show you what you're going to do. I think if I hawed into the mic, I would deafen everyone. Okay, please sit down. Thank you. Okay, I learned that from a professional actor. He was teaching a course about basically channeling all of your energy into something you are about to do. His theory was no matter what you're feeling in a moment, if you can encapsulate that energy and direct it out into whatever activity you are doing, that activity intensifies and is that much better, and you are that much better with your own energy. So thank you for accommodating my request. Okay, so my name is Megan. I am the CIO over at the Graduate School of Business at Stanford University. When I was first asked to talk to all of you, I was very honored. I am always honored to speak to a group of people. I am more honored when it's a group of women, and I just feel like it's a gift to me when I get to speak to women who are interested in technology. Because as you've heard and as we all know, we are in very small numbers. I went to a conference this week where there was an executive session. There were 10 tables of 8 people. I walked in, all men. So I walked up to a table and it was like, I think you gentlemen need some estrogen. And I sat down. That always throws them off their game. So I attended that conference and it was great, but it's frustrating sometimes to see how few of us are there. And I am very passionate about getting those numbers up. It's why I work with Girls Who Code. I do a lot of work out there to really encourage people to stay in and to progress in their careers. And I was asked to present sort of my career path. How did I get to CIO? So, my journey. I'm old, so when I was growing up, there was no such thing as an internet. There were not computers, there were not cell phones. I used a typewriter. Do any of you even know what that is? So I didn't actually see a computer until I was in college. So me growing up, biology was my thing. My plan was medical school, and I was going to be a neurologist. And I was a brainiac as a kid. I was lucky and very smart and straight A's. I think Radia and I would have been great school chums. But that was my goal. So I went to college, pre-med, took all the classes, loved everything except for organic chemistry. Did not like organic chemistry. And my senior year in college, I was a TA for a woman. She was a physician at the medical school at the university, and I was her TA for an undergraduate class. And at the end of my senior year, I made a decision to not go to medical school. Now, what I told everyone was, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my humanity if I don't go. because I had met a lot of neurologists. They didn't have a lot of personality. They didn't seem very empathetic. And that's no offense if any of you are neurologists or know neurologists. They are wonderful people. But I told everyone, I'm not going to go. I think I wouldn't be me at the end of school. And I'm going to refer back to that later, because there was another reason. So when you spend your entire childhood, teenage years in college thinking you're going to be a doctor and then decide not to, what do? Well, you get a job, which is what I did. So I just got a regular day job and started working, and didn't really like it. I thought, there's a lot of things I want to do. I love being in charge, and this isn't quite cutting it. And at the time, there was a degree called an MBA that I heard, if you get an MBA, it really opens doors. You get this great tool set of things to learn. So I applied and I went to graduate school and I got my MBA, and while I was there, my plan changed. Vice President of Marketing for Nike. That was my new thing. I was an athlete in college. I was an oarsman, so I rowed crew. I actually started the women's rowing team at my university because they only had a men's team. I went out for the men's team. They did not like that. So I started a women's team, and I identified as an athlete. And I thought, well, at Nike, you get 2-hour lunches, and there's a gym on campus, and they work with athletes. How perfect is that? I didn't think there was really anything different I would be able to do. Problem was, when people started hiring out of the grad school, the folks hiring for marketing positions didn't offer me a job. I interviewed, but they didn't. However, I did get a job offer from a couple of consulting firms, one being Ernst & Young. Now at the time, again, this was pre, do any of you know what Y2K is? This was prior to that. So the bread and butter at Ernst & Young was completely overhauling the systems and companies to save us from the apocalypse of 3 zeros in a date. So I was hired, and I was immediately thrown on to software called BAAN, B-A-A-N. It was a German software. It was for a pharmaceutical company, and they put me in there and said, you have to implement this thing, make it work. Mind you, I'd never seen a database. I took one coding class in college, basic. So I went on the scene and thought, oh my Lord, I have a lot to learn. And I said to them, please put me through these classes so that I can learn what I'm doing. So I went to database development classes, a lot of development in many different languages, project management, all sorts of training that I felt I needed to do this job well. And I took over the project eventually, and we succeeded after a year to completely overhaul the system for the pharmaceutical company. I gained a reputation of being able to really get things quickly and understand sort of fundamentally and philosophically how technology efforts had to be rolled out in order to be successful. I had a knack for it. So I started being parachuted into failing projects, and I would turn them around in a couple of months and get them on the right track, and then they'd nosedive me into another one. What it meant is that I worked with many technologies over the course of 5 years. I became certified in SAP, Siebel, a whole bunch of different pieces of technology, software. I worked with all databases imaginable, and I worked with some incredibly smart people. Is that me? I do. The mothership is coming. And it was great. Had a great skill set. I was managing $200 million projects, working with amazing people, but I was traveling 100% of the time. I was living in airports, and that gets tiring. So after 5 years, I decided, I think I'm gonna leave Ernst & Young and find a job where I can sleep in my own bed. So I joined the .com craze, which was truly a craze back then, early 2000s. And I joined a company whose goal was to completely uproot UPS. We were going to build a new piece of software that was going to transform how manufacturing companies receive their goods. We were going to do it faster, better, and cheaper. Now, I'm sure you've heard of them, right? Yeah, no? You didn't? Because they failed. Didn't happen. But I spent 2 years having a phenomenal experience of building a piece of software to a spec, something that had never been done, trying to uproot a company that had its legs so deep in the earth that it was almost impossible, and it was an amazing experience. I took it from the cradle all the way literally to its grave. But it was an amazing experience, and it was built on a Microsoft stack, and I had phenomenal developers. It was amazing. And then one day I was told I had to lay off 17 people, and that was terrible. And then the next day, they laid me off. Made me do their dirty work. So I looked around, and thanks to a wonderful network of professionals, somebody said to me, have you heard these folks are looking for a CIO? You might want to or it wasn't the CIO title at the time. They were looking for a director of technology. You might want to look at that. And okay, I went and I interviewed. Decided I wanted the job, and I'm very much I call it the pit bull. When I see something I want, I grab hold. And I adore pit bulls. I foster pit bulls, but I have a very specific way I laser focus on things and I make them happen. So I became the CIO of the Grammy organization. I started out as a managing director of technology because I'd grown into that, and then in a couple of years I asked to be the CIO. I had to push very hard for that. But what I did is I walked into an organization that had been homegrown, literally, and this was a lot of what I saw in the early 2000s, 2003 through about 2010, sometimes even today. Companies that had hired a guy to do the network, hired another guy to bring in the technology. They'd used a piece of freeware to build their entire enterprise system on, and then I came in and they said, you know, all of this is having problems, make it work. So I inherited everything and I had to completely turn it around from the ground up. So network up, everything, you name it, I touched it. I was crawling under desks, I was doing whatever it took. I hired a team, completely renovated the technology, and I was very proud of that. Took them from GroupWise mail client, if anyone even remembers GroupWise, to Outlook. The first voice over phone system that I had ever experienced, implemented that, and it was awesome. And it was amazing, and it was great to be around all the artists. I had exposure to a lot of things that I wouldn't have exposure to otherwise, and my feeling was, if I'm gonna do this job of tech, let me do it in an industry that really intrigues me or I find fascinating. And I had taken piano as a kid, and I loved it. I loved being around the artists. So it was an amazing experience, and it was about 5 years. And then another opportunity was presented to me. It was to be the managing director of the Oscars organization. So I went there. And it was literally the same experience, ground up. I had to completely overhaul the technology. It was an amazing experience. My favorite, and probably my most proud part of it, was that I designed and implemented the first ever online voting system for the Oscars. Now, mind you, we weren't curing cancer, and I know that. I would often say that because when you're in it, when you are in Hollywood in the midst of awards, people get a little crazy. It's all about that dang gold statue. And I would have to step back because I knew people who were actually curing cancer. It was like, guys, we are not curing cancer. However, that program for me was an amazing experience for a variety of reasons I'll share over the course of this presentation, but primarily because of the security. When we were starting, we realized that banks are very secure and we had to be even better. Because if a bank gets hacked, rarely will Wells Fargo will not go down the tubes if they have a hack and some information gets out. If the Oscar vote gets hacked, they are done. 10-year recovery on their reputation. So I was tasked with not only building it, but also protecting it. I worked with some of the smartest people, I believe, on this planet, including some security professionals. I worked with a guy who hacked into NASA when he was 11 years old. He was arrested, and then, of course, the government turned him. So he worked for good. But it was an amazing project, and to this day, one of the proudest moments that I've had in my career. After about 5 years, though, I was exhausted. I had worked 14-hour days, 137 days in a row. It was a hard place to be, female in tech, in film, doubly dominated by men. Harvey Weinstein, surrounded by, before the Me Too, I've had a lot of my own Me Toos. And I decided it was time to take a break. I was really tired. I didn't know if I wanted to do this work anymore. I was exhausted. So I left and I took 8 months off. In the 8 months, I wrote a book about my experience. I can't share a lot about why I left, but some of it had to do with, I believe, gender bias, things that I hope to talk more about in the future. But I left and I took 8 months off and I said, what do I want to do? I don't know. I really love doing this work because what I love most about what we do is wherever we are, we get to know processes and people like no one else in the company. I knew better how every single person at the Oscars and the Grammys and the manufacturing company and every other company I contracted with, I knew how they operated better than anyone in any of the other divisions. Marketing knew marketing. HR knew HR. But when you are working in tech, you have to understand what companies do to such a depth and such a breadth that you know that organization better than anyone. And there is an amazing capacity in that to do really well by that organization and to help them get better and to help them see things they may not be able to see on their own. So I thought, how do I apply this and not work 14 hours a day? Because I was tired. I'd worked a long time. And someone said, have you thought about higher education? And I said, no, I hadn't really thought about that. But there was this, a lot of people were telling me that they really believe in life balance. They believe in having a job and having a life outside of it. And that appealed to me because one of the things that I did in my career was I made my career my entire life. So many times I thought I have to prove I am better and I am smarter, and that translated to me to be a workaholic. Workaholism is not a good thing. I do not encourage it. I never got married. I never had children. I didn't take a vacation for 7 years. Not a good thing. Always be aware that your life has to be in balance. You will not be a happy person if it's not. So I heard all that about higher ed, and I said, okay, I'm gonna try it. So the last part of my career has been working for schools. I started out at a small arts college in LA, then I was recruited by USC, and recently Stanford, where I have been for a year. And I'll tell you, the job is the job no matter where you go. The change that you can affect over organizations is the same. If you have the skills, they apply. Whenever I hear someone say, oh, but you don't have any experience in this industry, it's like, you know, I have experience in technology and that translates no matter where I am. And I'm a big believer in that. So if anyone ever tells that to you, if you're interviewing and they say, oh, you've never been here, they don't get it. They do not understand what you do, what you bring, and that industry does not matter. I mean, it's always great. If I'd been in higher ed all my life, I would better understand certain things about how they operate, but it takes just 60 days to learn that stuff. And one thing I will share with you, to use Radia's example, whether you've built a plane, or what I've experienced, whether you've won an Oscar, or whether you are a tenured faculty member, your needs and wants are the same. You want your technology to do the same thing. You want it to work. And when we are dealing with these people, the same methods that we approach and how we deal with our clients and our customers apply. So the work is the work. And it's pretty amazing work. I do really like it. Now, I'm going to share with you what I call sort of the lessons learned on my journey that are also things I wish someone had told me to avoid a few years of what I call trauma, or very tough times that I had. But before I do, I think it's important to share with you a few things that I am outside of the office, because I like to consider myself a well-rounded individual. So on the one, I was a professional dancer many, many, many years ago. But I consider that an important part of me because it's my creative self. And the one thing I will say, some of the best technicians I have ever worked with are artists, especially musicians. I don't know what it is, but some of the smartest people I've ever seen, they are also musicians. There's something about the combination of, because people think of us as being, very rigid and rule-driven, and yes, we have to be, if then else. But there's something about being able to think creatively in that moment of trying to solve a problem that also does help. So I really love that. I performed improv for several years with a group. If you have not taken improv, do it. It is the one thing that has made me able to walk in front of any group, even if I am not scheduled to speak, and talk, and do it somewhat coherently, and not be worried or nervous. So I seriously encourage you, do that. You will gain skills you don't even imagine if you do improv. It's amazing. And I'm a big lover of action movies, so I studied choreographed sword fighting. I think it's the dancer in me. If you ever need somebody to fight with a rapier dagger, or a cutlass, or a Conan broadsword, double cutlass, I can do it. I'm your gal. Doesn't really get called for much in my line of work, but I like to talk about it. On my service work side, I am a big believer in being of service. I think the reason we are on this planet is to serve others. That is something that we do in our jobs. I am of service when I am working as a CIO. When I am not, I am of service in other ways. So I teach new decision-making skills to prisoners. One of the most rewarding things I've ever done. I do like to guest speak with girls who code. It's frightening that from age 14 to age 21, we go from 64% to 4% interest in technology. I am very opinionated about all of the reasons why. I won't get into a lot of that detail here. The one thing I will say, I think it's very hard as a 10-year-old girl when you see the Kardashians and their 150 million followers and they're posing in their bikinis. Not that there is anything wrong with that, but when that is the model of what fame and importance is, it's very hard to say, I'm going to study computers. It really is, and there's just some simple and endemic things that are causing this. And I sit with lots of groups a lot of times of how do we get under this, and I do a lot of speaking with teenagers and adolescents, because to show them that our worth is so much more than this picture on this social media post, but it's hard to combat that these days. And I think that's what we all have to do, is show you can absolutely be there in your bikini, but be holding your laptop, writing some code. I used to joke years ago, I said, if I ever did Miss Universe, my talent would be hacking into a firewall. It's just, I thought, why not? So I work a lot with groups that deal with teenagers and adolescents. I also teach something called Your Inner Mean Girl. That's for adolescent girls, because as we all know, as women, and I'm sure some of the men in the room too, but as women, with some of the pressures we grew up with, there's a lot of negative self-talk that we do. I'm not pretty enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I can't do it. I didn't go to medical school because I didn't think I was smart enough. I had a 4.5 GPA. I was number 1 and 2 in my class. I didn't think I was smart enough. I can admit that now. I couldn't for so many years. I had to come up with an excuse. Oh, I'm going to lose my humanity. No, I didn't think I was smart enough. And I had no one around me and no resources to help me deal with that negative self-talk. So that's why I work with the adolescents and teenage girls. And all of us have an opportunity to do that within yourself. Look in your mirror every day and say, I am enough. Write it on your mirror. If you have lipstick, write it on there with something. That's the greatest thing you will ever do for yourself. Morning and night. I kid you not, affirmations in the mirror are amazing. They're amazing. And I also teach something called May Cause Magnificence. This is also for women. It's really about subtle changes we make in our days to step into our greatness. Because each and every one of you has the power to do incredibly great things, but you need to know that first. And you need to embody that. And the problem is there's a lot of pressures in the society for us to not embody that. We have to be willing to do it. And then my passions. I love dogs. I'm a dog rescuer. I've saved at least 40 dogs from death row and 3 cats. At one point, I fostered 9 pit bull puppies. That was a little crazy. It's an online school called Joyful Happenings, because if there's one thing I've learned in my career, we have to find the things that make us happy, and we have to experience joy. If joy is in your work, wonderful. If it's not, find what it is. And so I put courses online that help folks work through some things that might be impeding their joy, and it's all from personal experience. Because I've had challenges, I've had ups, I've had highs, I've had lows, I've had horrible moments in my life, all related around my career, and I've learned to work through them, and so I want to help other people. And then I think the thing I'm most excited about is I have recently been asked to consult with a company I cannot name, I am NDA'd, but their first goal is to help us all eat healthier, and then a secondary goal with the profits is to feed the world. And I have heard that a lot, but I kid you not, what they're talking about is powerful, and I think they might be able to do it. So I'm very excited about that. So all of that said, let me get to the 10 things I've learned on my path to the illustrious title of ZIO. I joke though, I really would love to be the Empress of IT. They won't give, even at Stanford, I was like, can I be the Empress of IT? And HR thought I was kidding, but they won't give it to me. So, first and foremost, pretty simple. Hire people who are smarter than you, and then delegate. This took me about 10 years to learn. The problem is I was a female in a male-dominated field. Every time I started a new project, I thought, I have to prove I know everything, that I'm the smartest one, because if I don't, they're going to say it's because I'm a woman. And that was a really hard thing for me to get over, because when you try to be everything to everybody, you exhaust yourself, you get really tired, you don't deliver as well as you could. So I learned, and it took me some time, I have to hire people who are smarter. And Jack Welch, who ran GE for many years, he's the one I read his autobiography, and he said that, always hire people smarter than you. It's great. And I loved what Radia said about asking questions, because I still find myself sometimes, I'm like, I'm the CIO, I should know this. But I'll say, I do not understand, or treat me like I'm 5. That's one that I love to say. Treat me like I'm 5, help me understand this. But always be willing to bring in the talent. You're only as good as the team that surrounds you. And be willing to give things up. Because the other thing that is our responsibility in life is to help other people grow. You don't help them grow if you don't give them tasks and you don't delegate to them. I live in fear of that sometimes, because I'm going to give something to someone and I know they may not have all of the skills, but they have to fail in order to grow as well. and together the two of you are stronger. So I highly recommend that. Develop and expand your emotional intelligence. This is vital. Emotional intelligence is basically our ability to say, I'm aware of myself, I'm aware of what I react to, I'm aware of how I am reacting. I can forgive people. I can also, oh Lord, are you kidding? 5 minutes? I could be up here all day. I'll do my best. Especially, and the ability to say, I am sorry. I am sorry for doing that. A lot of people, as they move up the chain, say to themselves, I can't ever be wrong, because then people won't respect me. People have a lot more respect for you when you are self-aware enough to acknowledge when you have done something wrong. If you don't know a lot about EQ, emotional intelligence, look it up. There's some amazing works out there, and really embrace it and bring it into your everyday. Trust yourself. This is a big one. And I'm talking about the trust that is that part of you that knows the answer. When we are little girls, I very much believe, and I am using gender term. If you're non-binary, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I identify female, so I use that pronoun when I talk, and girls. So I hope nobody is bothered by that. But from the time we are little girls and little boys, I love that there is a man here. But when we're younger, we are so locked in to this thing, our intuition. It tells us everything we need to know all the time. It feels right. It doesn't feel right. As we grow, we are taught to ignore that. We lose connection here, and we start going up here all the time. Now, this is an amazing thing. This brain of mine has done incredible things for me in my career. But when you completely disconnect from this part of your intuition, you aren't trusting you, because it gives you important information. When I was with a job, I was in a job, CIO job, for 3 years. The president of the company retired. A new president came in. It took 6 weeks for that president to grant me an audience. I thought that was odd. I'm the CIO. When I did get the audience, I was sitting in the office. He walked in and said, "Why is anyone using a PC here? No one in the world uses PCs anymore." And in that moment, I took a breath and I thought, wow, he has no idea. He has no idea what's happening in the world of tech, nor does he want to. And he just showed me how he feels about what I do, because he basically belittled me and passed a judgment and shared that judgment with me, no EQ whatsoever. Right here at that moment said, this isn't going to work. This person and I were not going to mesh. I tried to make it work for 2 years. And for my life, those 2 years were hell. If I had listened to this in that moment, I would have quit. I mean, I would have done it nicely, but I would have exited. I would have found a better position for me. But we have this thing in us that's like, I have to make it work, I have to make it work, I have to make it work. When you're screaming, your intuition's like, no, you don't. Do what's right for you, what makes you happy, what's healthy. So trust yourself and trust that voice. If you have a hard time getting in touch with it, meditate. I'm a big meditator. Please ask me if you have any questions about that later. Work with integrity. This one's important because we all say we work with integrity, but then you sometimes get into moments where acting from integrity and coming from integrity is a little hard, because in doing so, somebody is not going to like you. You're going to upset the CFO because you need another $1 million, but it's the right thing to do. Always come from a place of the right thing to do. Our jobs, what's hard about technology is it's this black hole to a lot of people. You have to be able to explain it in a way that is accessible, and it is a way that is friendly, because people by nature often feel stupid when they aren't in tech and they ask you questions, and you have to be really careful about how you deal with them to say, no, you're not stupid. That's a great question, and let me answer it for you in a way that makes you feel comfortable, like you can receive the information. But too often I have seen technology people on every level not give the full story because they don't want to upset someone, or they want to be liked. I will tell you, I have said this so many times in my career, I am not here to be liked. I am here to be of service to this organization, and sometimes those two things don't work together. If you live with your integrity intact, again, you always know what to say and how to say it. You can give really bad news or disagree with someone in a very respectful and professional manner. Just always be aware of where it's coming from. I love this photo. Be authentically you. When I was in first grade, I was a brownie, which is a precursor to Girl Scouts, and there was an after-school activity, and it was a Halloween celebration. You could either be a skeleton or a princess. I will give you one guess what Megan was. I was the only skeleton in the room. So the first time I saw this picture, and I also, I used to study with Deepak Chopra, who I have a great respect for, and he was asking people what their archetypes were, and people were Mother Teresa, and somebody else really important, Abraham Lincoln. He got to me, and I said, Batman? Because I love Batman. Batman has no special powers, and he wants to do good, and I really resonated with that, and he also drove a really cool car. But be authentically you means be willing to be who you are. One of the tactics I tried to be successful early in my career, I tried to become a man. I tried to look like a man. I cut all of my hair off. I didn't wear makeup. I wore pantsuits. I tried to take on very male characteristics. I don't know if it worked or not, but what I do know is that in doing so, I separated me from a very important part of myself, which was my feminine energy, and I got really sick, and I was miserable. And once I realized that all of that was happening because I had completely separated from part of me that's my core, I had to step back into it, and my life changed. Now, I'm not saying, don't cut your hair short. If short hair is your thing, rock it. Dye it blonde or purple. But make sure you're doing what feels right for who you are. I mean, yes, there's certain moments where we have to dress a certain way or be a certain thing for the sake of the audience, and some people don't even pay attention to that. But just be authentically you and respect what you feel is right inside for who you are meant to be as a human being on this planet. You have a right to be here. You have a right to own space. Own it. Face your fear. Do it anyway. Online voting at the Academy. When I was asked to take on the project, some very important people in Hollywood said to me, you are going to be the downfall of the Academy. Now, when somebody says that to you, you're like, really? Mm-hmm? Huh? Because the idea of moving to an electronic voting system in a company that had done something on paper for so long was such a catastrophic thought for so many. I can't even tell you the garbage that I got. It was horrible. And a great fear came up in me of, oh my God, what if I do? What if I destroy the Academy? But I thought, well, hold on, I know what I'm doing. I know how to do this. I know what I need to do. I knew who I need to hire. So I stepped into my fear and said, I'm going to do it anyway. When we launched the system, we had more people vote for the Oscars than ever before. It was by far one of the greatest successes of my career. But that would not have happened if I had just stepped back and shrunk away like these people wanted me to. I was going to say like these men wanted me to. I never like to say things that sound like I'm bashing on the fellas, because I'm not. I have just been surrounded by men the majority of my career, and that's been my experience. So if something makes you feel fearful, and I'm not saying don't, go run off a cliff without a parachute. No. I think you know what I'm getting at. Face the fear. Do what you need to do to walk through it, because it's amazing what you learn on the other side. It really opens up so many things for you. And if you do something you're afraid of, the rest of your life becomes a little bit easier. I kid you not. Know your worth. This is really important, especially as women. We stink when it comes to negotiating for salaries. Every single research paper out there shows we kind of go into this, well, okay, I'll take 30K less, okay, because we want to be liked. The things that as we grow and we're taught, be likable, don't upset anyone. Don't disagree. Don't seem needy. I hate that one. One time someone called me high maintenance. I was like, really? I'm looking out for my career. I am not high maintenance. I'm just responsible. But really know what you're worth on the street. Know your value and be willing to negotiate for it and ask for it. Ask for more than it to get the number that you want, but really, really know your value. I mean that from a dollar perspective, and I also mean from internally. How are you willing to be treated? What are you willing to put up with? Granted, with Me Too and all that, there's almost an overarching now, everyone is worried about doing anything that might offend a woman. But I still deal with behaviors that drive me crazy, and I am willing to talk about it. I recently, in a recent job, my CFO, I'd make a recommendation, he'd call another CIO and check on it. But he didn't do that with any of his male direct reports. We were all C-levels. And so I went to him and I said, I'm trying to understand why you are asking about my recommendations, but none of the men. I do think it was unconscious gender bias. Whether it's conscious or unconscious, we have to talk about it. So know what you are worth and stand up for what you think is right and how you are being treated. You may not be popular, but you will sleep well at night. Push if needed. That sounds strange. This is back to what I said before about if you know the right way and the right path to go, push. Again, you may not be the most popular person in the room, but you will ultimately be respected for doing the right thing. And these are the moments when it's, we have a problem. We need to pause the project. We need to take an extra 6 weeks to refactor that section of code, because if we don't, in 5 years, I guarantee you, this thing will implode. I've had to do that a lot in my career. You have to push. I will say higher ed still has this mindset that you spend on technology once and it runs for 50 years. And I deal with that a lot. It's really interesting. You have to make significant investments in your technology on a regular basis. And I had to be willing to say that. And I did, and now I'm hoping I get some money. But push if needed. The last two, and this is really important, find your tribe, your circle, your group, whatever support mechanism you need to get you through the tough times. Again, as a woman, I don't know about you, but my story is I can do it all by myself. I can do it all by myself because rarely have I had other women around or role models. It's been hard for me to find role models. But once I have found them, they have been immensely valuable for me to go to and say, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. Please help. Find them, embrace them, love them, do whatever you need to do. Reach out to me if you need to, because I will support anyone that I can. And then finally, define happiness for yourself. Back to my Oscars experience, I will say, I worked my entire life to build this career that I was told would make me happy. I was told if I had a really important title and had a really great salary, and then with a company that everyone goes ooh and ah when they see photos of you on the red carpet, and then I would do this amazing project. I did all of these things I had heard would make me successful and happy, but I will tell you, at the height of all of it, I was miserable because I had given my entire life to nothing but my career. Because someone else said to me, that kind of happiness, that kind of success makes you happy and brings you things, and it doesn't. There are other things that resonate with me that work in conjunction with my career that make me happy. And I had to experience that to learn that. So I'm telling you, find the things that make you happy. If it's in the office, wonderful. If it's out of the office, great. But find it. Don't live up to someone else's definition of what happiness is. It's different for each of us, and it is okay to go for that. That's why I foster dogs. Greatest joy in my life. 6 puppies running around. The poop, not so much. The puppy is a love. So find it. So I just want to close with a few quotes from some of my favorite women. I really love the one from Ayn Rand. It's who's not going to let me at who is going to stop me. I absolutely love that quote. I admire all of these women a great deal. And then one that I sort of just say on my own. You attract what you are, not what you want. If you want great, then be great. All of us have that ability. There's a lot of messages out there that tell us we don't. But we do. It's up to us to grab it and to honor it and to respect it and to respect ourselves. So be great. Be great. This is my info. If anyone wants to reach out, please feel free. Would love to chat. What amazes me when I speak at these kind of conferences is that a lot of the conversations that I have after them is less about technology and more about a lot of other things about life. To me, everything is connected. So if you want to talk about dogs, I would love it. You want to talk about managing a development team of 55 guys, happy to do it. But I just want to thank you all for your time and your attention. I truly value it. I'm so glad to see all of you here. Let's work together, because together we can get that number up from 4%. And then one of you, 2 of you, maybe 10 of you can sit in a room with me, all as a CIO, and be the predominant gender in the room, because I would love that. Thank you very much.